West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
The insider-in-chief is back. At a Texas rally last night, former President Donald Trump did more than just tease a 2024 presidential run. He sounded like he is assembling his mob, urging his supporters to hold protest if he's held accountable and thrown in the slammer for trying to pull off a coup to stay in power. You don't have to read between the lines. Just look at how he was reading the lines. This was not his ordinary, incoherent buffet of word salad nonsense. He appeared to be reading from a teleprompter. The madness and the threats appear to be premeditated.
If these radical, vicious, racist prosecutors do anything wrong or illegal, I hope we are going to have in this country the biggest protest we have ever had in Washington, D.C., in New York, in Atlanta, and elsewhere, because our country and our elections are corrupt. They're corrupt.
Yes, he is saying the riot part out loud again. Sounds like much of what he was up to on January 6th as he instigated a violent insurrection.
We fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. We're going to the Capitol, so let's walk down Pennsylvania Avenue.
But wait, there is more. Last night, Trump made it clear that people who heeded his messed up call to action on January 6th might actually get away with it.
If I run and if I win, we will treat those people from January 6th fairly. We will treat them fairly. And if it requires pardons, we will give them pardons because they are being treated so unfairly.
Yes, he is ready to abuse presidential pardon powers once again, this time to let his supporters know they'll receive a get-out-of-jail-free card for January 6th and perhaps for whatever may come next. That's not a campaign promise, though. That's more like a dictator's decree. Yes, America, the coup is still happening. And joining me now is President Pro Tem of the United States Senate and member of the Judiciary Committee, Democrat Patrick Leahy of Vermont. Senator Leahy, does this sound like a threat to you coming from the former president?
It sounds definitely like a threat. I cannot believe I would ever hear this from somebody running for office or in office. I was a prosecutor for 8 years. To think that somebody would run for a high office and say, you can conduct any kind of criminal conduct you want, don't worry. If you're doing it to support me, I'll give you a pardon when I get there. As a prosecutor, I'd say this has to be somebody's making this up. It couldn't be real. And yet, when you were there on January 6th, as I was, I look out and I see them putting a noose up to hang the vice president if he didn't throw the election out. I see people storming through. I could smell the tear gas. I could see the damaged windows. beautiful parts of the Capitol have been damaged, and in seeing people say, we're doing this because Donald Trump told us to. This is not a democracy. This is something that you'd see in a third world nation with a two-bit dictator.
Yeah, but a two-bit dictator who is trying to make a comeback, it sounds like. And we did hear from a couple of Republican senators today reacting to Trump's remarks last night. It was not exactly full-throated condemnation. Let's watch.
I think it's inappropriate. I don't want to reinforce that defiling the Capitol was okay. I don't want to do anything that would make this more likely in the future. I want to deter people who did on January the 6th, and those who did it, I hope they go to jail and get the book thrown at them because they deserve it.
I do not think that President Trump should have made that pledge to do pardons. We should let the judicial process proceed.
Now, I know you don't want to necessarily criticize your Republican colleagues there in the Senate, but that was not exactly a profile encouraged moment. Senator, do you think that you're going to see anything more from your Republican colleagues when it comes to defending our democracy and condemning this thuggish, dictator-like behavior that we're seeing from Trump at these rallies?
I think that you have to have people stand up in both parties. We saw that after Watergate with Richard Nixon, when you'd have people ranging from Barry Goldwater to Mike Mansfield, right to the left, saying, this is wrong. I mean, as I said, I was a prosecutor for 8 years. When somebody commits a crime or incites crime, that's wrong. I don't care if they're Republicans or Democrats. It is wrong. And what the president, former president, has done, there is no question he incited a riot in last year, and there's no question they want to keep on encouraging it. Can you imagine he's saying, look, don't worry, you go out and commit whatever crimes you want. If it's helping me get elected, if I get elected, I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you. I'll give you a pardon. Now, that's something nobody, Republican or Democrat, should accept. I mean, that is third world baloney.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about President Biden's looming Supreme Court pick. I think a lot of our viewers and a lot of Americans are bracing for Mitch McConnell to try to figure out a way to block another Democratic president's nominee. What assurances can you give that that won't happen this time? Do you think that we won't see that happen this time? Do you think McConnell, knows that the jig is up and folks are sort of onto what he's been up to over these last several years with Supreme Court picks?
Well, of course, everybody saw the outrageous blocking of the constitutional process in blocking Merrick Garland. And unfortunately, Mitch McConnell was able to do it because he had a number of Republicans who had stated earlier that, oh yeah, Merrick Garland would be a good person. I could easily vote for him. And then they got lockstep in blocking even having a vote. If you don't like somebody, well then vote them up or vote them down. But what we saw there diminished the Supreme Court, certainly damaged the U.S. Senate, and you could see the complete hypocrisy of it when he ran through a Supreme Court nominee within days of the next election, which President Biden won. So no, I think it'd be very hard for him to block this. I think that the American public would say, you can't do this. And I would hope that the Supreme Court and those on it would not be in favor of something like this, because it is diminishing the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is losing its credibility. It's down the polls now in a way I never thought I'd see, because they see it as being political, not nonpartisan. And I think any leader of any party, Republican or Democratic, to try to politicize the Supreme Court is wrong. I know some of the names that President Biden is looking at. They are all superb nominees. They are people that in normal time would go through very, very easily. Let's bring the nominee up. Let's have a hearing. Justice Breyer gave us all plenty of advance notice.
Right. Well, I was going to ask you about that because we're hearing Republicans go on the attack over President Biden's announcement that he would name an African-American woman to the Supreme Court. Let's take a listen to what Republican Senator Roger Wicker said.
The irony is that the Supreme Court is at the very same time hearing cases about this sort of affirmative racial discrimination.
Yes.
And while adding someone who is the beneficiary of this sort of quote.
What's your sense of how the president has handled this?
I think he's handled it very, very correctly. And I can tell you, I look at one of my granddaughters who's African American, straight A's in school and everything else, to have this baloney. And Roger Wicker's a friend of mine, but basically he's saying, well, if you're a woman, and if you're a woman of color, you can only be qualified if you have some affirmative action. Every single woman, white or black, in this country should reject such a foolish and racist statement. You pick the best person possible. I didn't remember any Republican coming up when Ronald Reagan said, I'm going to place the first woman on the Supreme Court, Sandra Day O'Connor, backed by Barry Goldwater and backed by me. And I voted for her because I felt she was the most qualified name that came up. Nobody thought this was some kind of a special thing because you're a woman or you're a woman of color. Comments like that make us look to the rest of the world as though we're a subpar country.
It is Monday, the 31st of January of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays because we had the weekend and a little bit of football. Oh yeah, well, my Niners failed and the Rams prevailed, and they will be meeting the Cincinnati Bengals. So if you're into that sort of thing, well, you're into that sort of thing. I used to be a lot more into it, to the point where it was almost like going to church. There was a whole ritual revolved around the Sunday football game and the gathering, the communion with our fellows and gals. Yeah, well, I guess I've decided to quit the church of football, at least on that level. I mean, how many extra plates of nachos can one eat? How many? It was a lot more than just nachos, I'll tell you. Okay, so we had football, and that was interesting. No one took a knee. No, those days are long past. COVID denial. Violent threats to not have the vaccine to anybody. I don't want it, so no one can have it. I don't like that book, no one can read it. What is it with these people? They're such absolutists. Don't they know the universe is not an absolute thing? I guess not, because there is a war on knowledge, and the bodies are piling up. Yeah, demographics apparently determined who lives and who doesn't. So, like that old Templar knight in the Indiana Jones movie. Choose wisely, my friend. Choose wisely. Yeah, and if you choose to vote that way, and you know what I mean by that way, you may suffer the consequences. Okay, all right. Well, we got Trump out on the trail, the campaign trail. Apparently, he's got his Nuremberg rallies going in full tilt, and we just allow this. Can you imagine Huey Newton or Bobby Seale being able to do this? No, you can't. You know why? Because they'd be dead. I mean, eventually you end up that way. Mysteriously. Or as I have trademarked, I'm in the process of trademarking the word convenient. As applied to Putinesque ways of people just conveniently disappearing from the face of the earth. And when I mean disappearing, I don't mean actually disappearing, but, dead. Conveniently. Trademarked. I'm still waiting. I'll be waiting probably longer for that than I have been for that Soros money that's been due me since we divested from the Krugerrand. If I could just have the interest, I'd be happy. I mean, even that would make me richer than Elon Musk. And trust me, I would not be going to the moon. I would not be going to Mars. And I wouldn't be launching my electric vehicle into, suborbit so I can fall back in here and burn up and maybe not all the way and fall on people. Yeah, put that in your tunnel. Okay. Pack a lot in on a Monday, don't I? Yes, I do. Well, we got Republican MAGA politicians, candidates running for office, telling their constituents to come to the polls with their guns to make sure that people vote right, and if they don't vote right, you don't let them vote, and you have the guns. I thought that was supposed to be illegal. Well, I guess the law and order types, and you know what I mean by law and order types, they're the ones that say, I make up the law and you better follow my orders or else. It's not about justice. It's not about due process. It's not about equal protection. It's about what I want, and I want it now, and you better heed my word. You don't discuss with me because look what I'm backing. I decide what polite conversation is, don't I? And then when somebody else comes in packing, oh, trust me, Bobby Seale, Huey Newton, Eldridge Cleaver, can you imagine them coming to a school board meeting and taking it over and forcing, Soul on Ice on everybody? Actually, they shouldn't have to force it. It should just be there anyway. I read it. I can't remember if it was in my school library, but it was in the stacks of books I grew up with. Isn't that funny? They're so put upon. I don't want my kid knowing about Martin Luther King. Really? It's getting there. We already have some parent who has a book that's a novel about a kid's awakening to Martin Luther King. Got that pulled from the stacks. Why? Apparently there's some profane words like shit. And this guy's flying an F Biden flag out front of his house. You go in there and you can tell. You go into his house and you can tell that there's a lot of F-bombs thrown around at the wife and the kids. Yeah. The same parent has expressed some rather racist sentiments on his Facebook page. Mm-hmm. Isn't that how it always is? So, they've been working hard, all of these MAGAs, with their goon squad Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, taking over school boards, taking over, pretty much purging all Democrats from local election boards and offices. Right down to dog catcher. Yeah, they know how to play the game. I wonder who helped them. I wonder who said, you know what? Look what I did. Well, he was able to do that because he had a young representative democracy going on there after the fall of the Soviet Union. I don't think that these Nazis understand what's going to happen to them. I know everybody's upset at Merrick Garland. They all say, well, I wish that Merrick Garland were still alive. He is. Trust me. But we don't want to violate posse comitatus. And why do I bring that up? Because it's going to take a large military operation to put down this insurrection. And I can understand the thinking in Merrick Garland's mind and others. Do we touch off a civil war or do we not? Well, if you want a Nazi takeover, do nothing. Will it touch off a civil war? Well, I would say that a small contingent of crazy-ass Looney Tunes who are so easily brainwashed so quickly, I wouldn't say quickly because they've had a 50 to 70-year Soviet-style plan. And I'll tell you, it started when they said that, oh, no, we're not going to teach civics in the schools. Why would we want our kids to know about civics? It's so divisive. No requirement to know how your government works. And if you don't know how your government works, and you don't know the history of how our government came to be, and you don't have an emotional attachment to it, then you're like any CEO corporatist type that has all the money in the world. They're basically without a nation. They make it up as they go along. Peter Thiel, Libertarian, Paradise Island turns into Survivor. And you know that game is stacked. Yeah, for theatrical, flourish. We live in the real world. We have real people suffering and rejoicing. Did you know that, Peter? Did you know that? The rest of you, neo-Nazi, proto-Nazi American bigots, libertarian survivor Treasure Island. You know that? We actually care for each other. We actually want due process and equal protection for all. We see nothing wrong with people voting. Let the chips fall where they may, except when you cheat. They're all happy Barry Bonds didn't make the Hall of Fame, but they're on more political Nazi steroids than we can imagine. Actually, on a more literal level, I want every single one of these Proud Boys, 3%ers, Oath Keeper, military cop types to pee in a jar to see how much human growth hormone and steroids are coursing through their system. Jesus Christ. So afraid I'm going to lose my masculinity unless I hyper make myself masculine. Hyper make myself masculine? Well, when you surf, sometimes language goes by the wayside. All right, enough of this. We've been ranting quite a bit on a Monday morning, but I got to tell you, I'm rather pissed by this. What is this guy? Is he a Mussolini? Nah, he's a Donald Trump. And I gotta say, I think that Tucker Carlson is being groomed. I think Vlad likes Tucker a lot more. He thinks that Tucker might be more effective at what needs to get done than Donald Trump. Well, I don't know. Put those two geniuses to against each other, who in like an apprentice type resume interview. I don't know. Who would prevail? Okay. They're just like the toady politicians in Red Dawn. And you know what happened to them? Yeah, they were lined up at the rock pile too. Heed my word. Heed my word. What's on the rest of the menu here in this peaceful salon that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy as we begin on this fabulous River City Hash Mondays? Well, a new federal law targets emergency medical care billing surprises. Yeah, you go in and then you go, what the hell? This is my copay? Okay, I'll mortgage my house. A federal judge decided not to rein in the roundup and capture of wild horses in eastern Nevada. Decided not to rein in. See what I did there? And hit by a surge of COVID-19, hospitals across Missouri are asking staff members and administrators to fill in, helping nurses, housekeeping, and patient transportation. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the Greek prime minister won a confidence vote over his government's handling of that snowstorm last week. They get to work over there. And criminal charges are being investigated by Canadian police after anti-vaccine protesters, you know those truckers in Ottawa, urinated on the National War Memorial, danced on the tomb of the unknown soldier, and used the statue of Canadian hero Terry Fox to display a profane anti-vaccine statement. Wow, I wonder where they got that idea from. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. The bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by the Kelly Lincoln, Roaring Girl, to some of those of you who know. And Kelly is a quite busy gal, and we appreciate all that she does here for us at Netroots Radio. Thank you, Kelly. If you would take a gander across the page from that chat room link, across the page to the left, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, which happens to have a fabulous live player right there. Push that button. Well, if you look across to the left of the page, near the bottom of that homepage, you'll notice then the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it helps us tremendously. I can't not tell you how much. It really does. If you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink, and if you could afford to send those funds our way once a month, I cannot tell you how it helps. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit, because we're able to stretch those dollars beyond compare, pay our bills, and, of course, maintain the constant upgrading of hardware and software. But when you pay your bills, it allows us, well, we found that you can fly under the radar, and it allows us then to continue this resistance against dark forces, against all that is right and good about America. Yeah, we're not afraid to look at our blemishes. We're not afraid to acknowledge that we've caused a few heartbreaks. But we want to do better now, don't we? Yes, we do. And so your help in allowing us to pay those bills allows us to continue fulfilling our civic duty as the founders intended so many years ago. Yeah, as a little aside, we're going on 11 years coming up in a month or so. That's right, 11 years of continuous 24/7, 365 resistance radio. Better than Air America. Longer. Of course, we don't pay ourselves. Well, neither did they. Well, they paid themselves. But we don't even pay ourselves. Enough of that. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. And I got to say, Tom's quite a busy fellow in his own right, and we appreciate everything that he does here at Netroots Radio as well. Thanks, Tom. You know, you should follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and I'll tell you why. Because I post the show notes and links diary. It will always be a diary. They're trying to move it to story. It's a diary. And I'm such a traditionalist, aren't I? Anyway, I post that show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and then I really try to get that out there on Twitter and other social media platforms in that 10 minutes. But a lot of times I'm too busy, and so I do it while that clip's going on. And even then, I apologize. I've been a bit bereft in my duties as, well, my own producer. Boy, it'd be nice to have one of those again. Anyway, follow me at Justice Putnam, and those show notes and links are an integral part to this whole multimedia operation here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, because that's where the real reportage is. And, not the puppet shadow play like you find on Java. that we do here. We do like a shadow puppet play, see? Little tombolas and little bells. And a little shadow play. Uh-huh. All right. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. And I guess on Spotify, too. We're going to have to take ourselves off Spotify. I know we're not making any money off of Spotify, so I doubt they're making any money off of us. What do you do? Well, we're distributed far and wide, so you can find us. And please do. Please. All right, let's get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy on this fine River City Hash Mondays. This is a bit of an explainer, and Tom Murphy from the Associated Press helps us do the explaining. Patients worried about getting hit with an unexpected bill after emergency care gained a layer of protection from a new federal law. The No Surprises Act prevents doctors or hospitals in many situations from billing insured patients higher rates because the care providers are not in their insurer's coverage netbook. The law won't eliminate billing surprises, but it is expected to ease concerns, especially in emergencies where patients may not have the time to choose an in-network doctor. A closer look at the law explains on how it will work. Now, how are patients protected? Insurers form networks of doctors and hospitals that agree to provide care for a discounted rate negotiated with the insurer. Providers outside those networks often bill patients for the difference between what they charged and what the insurer covered. Insurers also may cover less of the remaining bill after the patient pays a deductible, which is the amount paid for care before most coverage starts. In some cases, patients could receive the entire bill if the insurer does not cover anything outside its network. The new law ends these billing surprises for most emergency care by essentially requiring that patients receive in-network coverage with no additional billing from the provider. It also offers protection and care that is not an emergency when people are treated at in-network hospitals by a provider outside their network. That can include radiology, lab work, or care from an anesthesiologist. The law also protects out-of-network bills for air ambulances, but not ground ambulances, because I got to tell you, that's a racket. Man, when I got smacked, T-boned by a driver who ran a stop sign and T-boned my work van, in which I had some quite severe displaced ribs. Yeah, that hurt for a long time. Anyway, that ambulance cost, and I only went a quarter mile to get to Alta Bates. $1,200, and that was all the way back in the mid-90s. Imagine what that would be now. Jesus. Okay, I don't remember if they made me sign a release form and ask for the money up front, but I doubt that they would that they'd let that slip through. The No Surprises Act also has other protections. It beefs up protection against insurer claim rejections for emergency visits. Emergency departments are expensive places to seek care, and insurers have been trying to limit their use to only life-threatening emergencies. Remember when they said, you don't need Obamacare, you can just go to the ER? Oh, really? How times have changed. Now, can the protection be waived? In some cases that are not emergencies, a doctor outside the network may ask a patient to waive their protections from the law. In exchange, they will provide an estimate of what the care will cost. Those estimates also are available to uninsured patients. Patients have to sign this waiver before the care. If the final bill comes in at least $400 higher than the estimate, patients have a roughly 4-month window in which they can dispute the amount. Now, can patients still be surprised? Well, I tell you, a lot of people are surprised when you find out that, you're a lot sicker than you thought you were. Or you might be surprised when you find out you're not as sick as they say. Anyway, back to the billing surprises. Many people don't understand their insurance and how much it covers. That could lead to unpleasant surprises. This isn't necessarily going to protect people from big bills, but it is going to protect them from undiscounted bills, said Karen Politz, a senior fellow at the Kaiser Family Foundation, which studies health care issues. Shoppers often focus on the premium or the cost of coverage when they choose a plan and may not pay close attention to out-of-pocket expenses like deductibles. A high deductible can lead to a bill of several $1,000s. Maybe now more consumers will understand the limitations of their insurance, said Laura Wooster, a senior VP at the American College of Emergency Physicians. Sonner of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. A federal judge decided not to rein in the roundup and capture of wild horses in eastern Nevada, rejecting advocates' claims the federal government was, quote, needlessly and recklessly, end quote, killing free-roaming Mustangs in violation of U.S. law. Oh, they're killing them, but just not needlessly and recklessly. There's quite a bit of orders of what they're doing, apparently. With a little more than 4 weeks to go for federal land managers to complete what they call a drought-prompted gather near the Utah state line, U.S. District Judge Miranda Dew said she was not convinced groups trying to stop the process would win their underlying lawsuit. The court finds that plaintiffs have not shown they are likely to succeed on the merits of their claims, and that the balance of equities in this instance weighs against enjoining the 2022 gather, she said. The U.S. Bureau of Land Management insists it must round up the Mustangs before the end of February, one of several operations scheduled on an expedited basis due to historically dry conditions on the Western Range. Maggie Smith, a Justice Department lawyer, told the judge that a delay of even 2 or 3 days would prevent the agency from completing planned removals before the end of the year. The Bureau plans to capture more horses this year than ever before, at least 19,000 across 10 western states. The 13,666 gathered last year was the previous high. Agents are prohibited from using helicopters to drive herds into temporary corrals from March 1st to June 1st, but they can do it any other time, apparently. When mares typically are pregnant and give birth, after that, summer heat adds stress on the animals and contractor availability becomes a problem in the fall. Horse advocates, led by Laura Lee of the Wild Horse Education Animal Wellness Action and the nonprofit Canna Foundation, said the agency is squeezing the roundup of 2,030 horses in Nevada into a month under an illegal environmental assessment of a series of gathers over 10 years. Of 1,048 horses rounded up as of last Wednesday, the Bureau said 11 had died. Associated Press staff bring us this final offering in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Hospitals across Missouri are asking staff members and administrators to take on additional duties to help deal with the current surge in COVID-19 patients. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch reports that hospital employees are being asked to pick up shifts helping nurses by doing things like grabbing supplies or answering phones, or by filling absences in such areas as housekeeping and patient transport. At Mercy South Hospital, Katie Horton decided to spend her weekends and evenings over the last 2 weeks scrubbing patient rooms and helping nurses care for patients. Normally, the 49-year-old works from home helping hire people for non-clinical jobs at the hospital. It was eye-opening. I work from home. I've been very safe through it all, and that has certainly been a blessing, she said. I just felt like it was good to be able to see through the eyes of the person doing these jobs. COVID-19 cases have been declining in St. Louis over the past couple weeks, but the number of patients in hospitals remain near the highest levels of the pandemic. Our hospitals remain full. Our emergency departments are full, and there's not a lot of room in our ICUs either, said Dr. Alex Garza, co-director of the St. Louis Metropolitan Pandemic Task Force. So, although this is improving, many of our staff continue to be out because of COVID, or because they are taking care of a loved one or child whose school has unfortunately closed because of COVID. Well, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, postmodern and time-tested. The metaverse, as envisioned by certain corporate executives, might not be here yet, but it surely arrived in the new movie Belle, available in theaters in English or recommended in the original Japanese with subtitles. In the latest effort from Mamoru Hosoda, this animated tale follows Suzu, a shy 17-year-old from a rural village in Japan whose life had been marred as a young child by a traumatic event which had ruined her former joy in music and singing. Shy and unconfident, but close to her friends, she signs into something called You, a virtual universe where she can transcend her past, and as a reimagined sumptuous pop star, ends up playing to audiences of hundreds of millions as Belle. Unlike in the real world, as she points out, you can start over in You. All's well until a dragon shows up, ruining one of her shows. The dragon has enemies, as they do, and the second act becomes sort of a spectacular animated retelling of the Beauty and the Beast. Like Belle, the dragon is an avatar for a real-world character, Kai, who along with his brother Tomo are the victims of some pretty severe child abuse. For Suzu to convince the brothers that she really is Belle, she must perform in You as Suzu, which she does, securing a satisfactory ending and sealing the movie's place in the coming-of-age category. The message in Belle may be less profound every day, that the virtual world can be just another means of hiding our vulnerabilities, and that being seen for who we really are remains an act of courage. But it's beautifully and touchingly done. Note it'll be more memorable if you catch it on the big screen. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. When it snows this winter, make sure you clear more than your driveway. Before you hit the road and before you get in the driver's seat, check to be sure that your vehicle's tailpipe is clear of snow. If the tailpipe is blocked, carbon monoxide, an odorless, colorless, and deadly gas produced by your engine can build up quickly inside your vehicle, poisoning anyone inside. To learn more, call 1-800-CDC-INFO. That's 1-800-232-4636.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
For $3.5 trillion a year, shouldn't we Americans have a world-class healthcare system? Yet, while we spend the most of any advanced nation in the world to get care, more than $10,000 a year per person, we get the worst results. No surprise, then, that the Medicare for All idea is now backed by 85% of Democrats, 66% of independents, and, get this, 52% of Republicans. So why isn't Congress responding to this overwhelming public demand for universal coverage? I suspect that one big reason for Washington's big yawn over the people's plea for sweeping reform is that our lawmakers do not personally feel the financial pain and emotional distress that are inflicted on millions of regular Americans by a system built on private greed. After all, their health needs are met by a double dose of the socialistic care that they so furiously deny to our families. First, they're given big taxpayer subsidies to cover the cost of their insurance, with you and me paying about 72% of the price. But second, there's a secretive medical center located right in the U.S. Capitol building that provides a full-blown system of healthcare socialism to our governing elites. Called the OAP, Office of the Attending Physician, it provides a complete range of free medical service for lawmakers. No appointment needed and no waiting. They walk in and doctors, nurses, technicians, pharmacists, and other professionals tend to them right away. No need to show an insurance card, and they never get a bill. But they do get what a former OAP staffer calls the best health care on the planet. Thus, members feel no urgency to restructure a system that's working beautifully for them. This is Jim Hightower saying, so to get good care for all of us, we might start by taking away the pampered care that lawmakers have awarded to themselves.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
You are listening to 60 Second Civics from the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. The shot heard round the world is a line in the poem Concord Hymn by Ralph Waldo Emerson, describing the effect of the outbreak of the American Revolution in April 1775. The American Revolution and its principles became extremely influential around the world. It was the first of many rebellions by countries against their colonial rulers. Emerson wrote the poem for the dedication in 1837 of an obelisk in Concord, Massachusetts, that commemorates the Battle of Concord. And now, Concord Hymn by Ralph Waldo Emerson. By the rude bridge that arched the flood, their flag to April's breeze unfurled, here once the embattled farmer stood, and fired the shot heard round the world. The foe long since in silence slept, alike the conqueror silent sleeps, and time the ruined bridge has swept down the dark stream which seaward creeps. On this green bank, by this soft stream, we set today a votive stone, that memory may their deed redeem when, like our sires, our sons are gone. Spirit that made those heroes dare to die and leave their children free, bid time and nature gently spare the shaft we raise to them and thee. That's all for today's episode, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1940, and Ida Mae Fuller received a check from the U.S. government. That check was for $22.54. It may seem like a small amount, but the check represented something much larger. It was the very first payment of Social Security. Miss Fuller spent her working years as a teacher and then a legal secretary in Vermont. She paid into the new Social Security program for almost 3 years before she retired. One day, while running errands in Rutland, Vermont, she decided to stop at the Social Security office and find out more about the program. Miss Fuller later recalled, "It wasn't that I expected anything, mind you, but I knew I'd been paying for something called Social Security, and I wanted to ask the people in Rutland about it." The office took her benefits claim and sent it to Washington, D.C. Miss Fuller was the first in a batch of 1,000 claims forwarded to the Treasury Department for processing. She was 65 years old when she received her first check, and as good fortune would have it, Ida lived to see her 100th birthday. In the 35 years that followed, Ida received just under $23,000 in total Social Security benefits over the course of her retirement. In 2014, according to the Social Security Administration, over 59 million Americans will receive nearly $863 billion in benefits. Over the years, Social Security has been expanded to include people with severe disabilities and widows and orphans with survivors' benefits. Although politicians continue to squabble over the program and refuse to ensure its long-term solvency, Social Security remains one of the most significant programs enacted by the U.S. government for working people. In the aftermath of the 2008 Great Collapse on Wall Street that saw the retirement of millions of workers evaporate, Social Security continued, keeping upwards of 22 million seniors out of poverty. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 30 degrees Fahrenheit under partly cloudy skies, expecting a high of only 46. A mix of clouds and sun during the morning will give way to more cloudy skies this afternoon with winds light and variable. We did have a bit of rain last night, and though the temperatures were quite cold, there was no snow or ice, but a bit of rain and puddling outside right at this moment. Some clouds tonight with lows in the upper 20s, winds light and variable, and partly cloudy tomorrow with highs in the mid-50s. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon continue to rise. We now stand at 374,047 confirmed cases, and our deceased have also increased, and we stand at 432 confirmed deceased. Pollen is rated at none outside the window here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 32 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at level 2. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.41 inches. Visibility is at 7 miles, and relative humidity is at 98%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 47 degrees and sunny. Paris is 46 and sunny. Rome is 49 with a heavy mist. Kyiv is 32 and cloudy. Kabul is 26 and clear. Hong Kong is 52 and cloudy. Tokyo is 38 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 75 degrees and fair. San Francisco, California is 46 and partly cloudy with a heavy fog advisory. And New York, New York is 26 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. and that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Carolina Tigueras of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis said yesterday, Sunday, won a confidence vote called by the main opposition over his government's handling of a snowstorm last week that stranded thousands of people on a motorway and drew public outrage. The cold front hit Greece on January 24th, blanketed the country in snow from Athens to its islands. About 3,000 cars became trapped on the capital's main ring road for hours, with authorities having to call in the army to evacuate them. Authorities faced widespread criticism over their handling of the extreme weather conditions despite warnings from meteorologists. In his address to lawmakers ahead of the vote, Mitsotakis called the censure motion a desperate move that was clearly doomed to fail. He said the government had faced unprecedented crises since coming to power in 2019, including the COVID-19 pandemic, and referring to the snowstorm, accused the main opposition Syriza party of instrumentalizing a natural disaster to pile pressure on the government. The conservative government, which enjoys a comfortable majority in the 300-seat parliament, won by 156 votes to 142. Syriza submitted the no-confidence motion, saying the government had failed in its duty to protect the country. It also accused it of mishandling the pandemic and rising prices, and called on the government to resign.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Associated Press staff bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Police in Canada's capital said yesterday, Sunday, they are investigating possible criminal charges after anti-vaccine protesters urinated on the National War Memorial, danced on the tomb of the unknown soldier, and used the statue of Canadian hero Terry Fox to display an anti-vaccine statement. Thousands of protesters gathered in Ottawa on Saturday to protest vaccine mandates, masks, and lockdowns. Some traveled in truck convoys and parked on the streets around Parliament Hill, blocking traffic, including ambulances to local hospitals in which at least 3 people are known to have died en route. Ottawa police said officers are also investigating threatening behavior to police and others. I wonder where they got that idea, and I wonder where they learned it. We know where. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.